Review for the French Connection 2, 1975. Directed by John Frankenheimer, starring Gene Hackman. And a number of French people. the guy from the original, Fernando Rey. And Ed Lauter is in it too. Kind of a small role. So, I don't know if I've ever watched this movie before. I like the first one. It's not like my favorite movie ever, but very good movie. Gene Hackman, his death, what we're hearing, it's very sad. It's very weird, honestly, very strange death. I don't know, him and his wife. You can look into it yourself, but it's just sad. But so I figured, you know what? Let me give this a watch, because I don't think I've ever watched it before. And it's directed by John Frankenheimer. It's not the same director, but he's a solid talent himself. Well, let's not talk about the Island of Dr. Monroe, but Moreau. That's not his fault. But he did the original Manchurian Candidate. I reviewed that. It's a very good movie, very well directed. 7 Days in May. Ronin, obviously. I love Ronin. The movie's amazing, I think. That's probably his last really great movie. I don't hate Reindeer Games. I know a lot of people hate that movie. It gets a lot of hate. I don't know. I don't hate the movie. It's a little ridiculous, but it's kind of fun. So they got a solid director. He's no William Friedkin. But I'd say, solid, good storyteller. Knows what he's doing. And in this, the thing I liked about this movie a lot was I like the setting, because it's in Marseille. It's in the 70s. The entire movie's in France. Right away, he shows up to France. He's trying to catch the guy from the original. And you start to find out that there's a lot of corrupt cops in New York City. They're being paid off. He was able to get away. And maybe he's being set up by them here. So this is all spoilers. This movie's pretty old. So it came out a long time ago. And he, a lot of the cops in France don't really like him. He doesn't speak French, of course. So he's kind of on his own. He just wants to get the guy. His contact, Bernard Friesen, is pretty good in this. At first they don't like each other. He's got guys following him. I think he calls them Marines. And I like the opening scene because he's ripping apart fish at the docks, because Marseille is a port city in the south of France. And his hands are all dirty, full of fish guts and disgusting. And then Gene Hackman walks up, and then he shakes his hands. He puts his hand out. It's like all disgusting, full of fish guts. He shakes his hands, and that's a nice scene, because I think it shows that he's going to get his hands dirty. I mean, pretty obvious what they're doing, but I don't know. I like that. And he does. He definitely does, because he knows this guy somewhere in the city. He's kind of going around looking for him. He doesn't know anyone really, except for a few cops. And then he's spotted by the character's name is Alain Charnier, played by Fernando Rey. And then they kidnap him. And then pretty brutal stuff. They because he's a drug runner, So they tie him to a bed, and they start injecting him with opioids, heroin. They get him addicted to heroin, and he's almost in like a dungeon. Like, it looks like an old medieval dungeon, and really good setting for this movie. The plot, I think the plot in the original is better. It's more interesting. Because in this, he's just kind of wandering kind of throughout the city. At one point, he gets drunk with a bartender, because he can't talk to anyone. Because a lot of people don't speak English, and but this one bartender, kind of understands him. He starts getting drunk. He's like, hey, take some shots yourself. I kind of liked all those scenes, even though they have nothing to do with, him hunting, but I guess he's trying to make contacts. And, but yeah, and he's, he's abducted. I like the scene with this old woman who, she's English. She's like, I can talk to you. And she's like being nice to him, but then you start to notice that she's grabbing at his watch, and she's taking his watch off of him, and she's like living in this, I don't even know what dilapidated kind of weird hotel for junkies, I guess, and she is too, because she has track marks all over her arms, and so she's like stealing his watch, which probably isn't even worth that much money, because I don't think Popeye Doyle's like rich. He's not corrupt, or in the traditional sense, like many people in New York are. And in fact, some of them may have set him up. So there's some good intrigue there. And they're doing this to him because they want to know what information they have on Alain. So they're, I think about 3 weeks go by. He tells them everything he knows, and he's like, okay, I believe you. And then the Marseille cops are out on the town searching for him, and he's like, they're interfering with my business. So he just he shoots him up again, puts him in the car, and then they just drive by the police station, throw him out the car, and then he has to detox in the police station again, like in a kind of like medieval basement. Like, some of these places remind me of, like, they were built like 400, 500 years ago. Like, so I like that. I like that setting. I like the back and forth he has with Bernard Friesen. He's like, going cold turkey. Bernard Friesen brings him, some liquor, some wine, I think. And Gene Hackman's like, oh man, this is really good wine. And they start drinking together a little bit, and their friendship grows. And then once all that's done, then he's back on the case again. And he eventually does find him. And Gene Hackman's like basically like a sledgehammer, whereas the French police are more, as in a Cobra, he would say, a more subtle solution. As that guy in Cobra would say to Cobretti. Like, I like how Gene Hackman finally realizes where that hotel was, and he just goes and buys a bunch of gas. And then he calls Bernard, and he's like, hey, come here and bring him a lot of water. He's like, what? And then he hangs up, and then he just starts pouring the gas throughout the hotel, and then he just burns it down. And then the police are outside, so all the guys get arrested. Fernando is able to beat, he's always almost captured by Gene Hackman. He's always elusive. He's always right there, but he slips away, and he slips away again. And then later, they're doing a bust, a drug bust at this tanker, and it's in dry dock. That was a pretty cool shootout. And he escapes again, and then Gene Hackman and Bernard almost die because they're outgunned, and then they're being shot at from an elevated position, and then they start flooding the dry dock. And I think Bernard gets hit, and he almost dies, but Gene Hackman saves him just like Bernard saved him earlier. So Bernard saves Gene Hackman saves him. So I thought that was a nice way to pay it back. But he slips away again. So, Popeye Doyle, he's very angry. The French want him to leave. He brought in his own gun, which Bernard says, not to do. That's very illegal here. And Popeye Doyle's like, hey, I'm just playing by the rules. I didn't bring in anything. But when he got kidnapped earlier, he dropped his gun. And then later Bernard gives it back to him. And he's like, keep this to yourself. Don't tell anyone about this. But hey, my bosses want you gone. France wants you out of the country. So you're going to go to the airport and you're going to leave. But of course, that's not good enough for him. And he's chasing Fernando again. And I really like the end of the movie, which was like kind of shocking, because Gene Hackman sees him, barely slip away again, and he gets into a yacht or a boat, and they're going out to sea. And then he's kind of chasing the boat along the edge of the dock. And then he sees that Fernando gets out and is kind of, just standing on the deck of the boat, just kind of breathing in the fresh air. And then Doyle pulls out his gun and he sees him, aims, and then yells at him, "Hey, Alain!" And he turns around. Boom, he shoots him right in the heart, and the guy drops over dead. So then he got his man, even if it's not strictly illegal, I would say. But that is kind of Doyle, like, he'll get his man, he'll get the bad guy. Fernando's not a good guy, Alain Charnier, the character's name. He's not a good guy. The drug runner, he's killing people. But Doyle will bend the law, or just break it, because he's like, whatever, I'm about to leave. I don't think the French will be too angry that I got rid of this big drug runner. And Bernard earlier is looking at his file, and he's like, you've killed 5 men. And then Doyle's like, yeah. And but I like that ending. He just shoots him, and then boom, cuts to black, directed by John Frankenheimer. Thought that was really stylish. And so yeah, I do like the movie. I think Frankenheimer does what he can with the script. Like I said, in the middle, maybe it's a little... I think once he gets kidnapped, the movie does pick up. But before that, you're kind of just like, he's just kind of wandering around. You don't really know where this is going. But apparently the movie didn't do that well, though, because the first one was made for 1.8 to 2.2 million, the budget. Made over 75 million worldwide. This was 4.3 million, the budget. It made 12.5 million. So they're kind of disappointed by it. It says Gene Hackman almost passed on the film. He felt that the length of time between the original and the sequel would hurt the film's chances for success. In the DVD commentary, Hackman suggested this was the reason for the film's disappointing box office performance. Doyle's memorable cry of Mickey Mantle sucks during the cold turkey sequence was a source of much trouble for the filmmakers and their legal department. The producer had to track down Mickey Mantle to obtain his permission for the reference. After a long phone call, Rosenfeld flew out to Mantle's home in Dallas with a print of the film, which was screened for him and his lawyer. When Gene Hackman uttered the line, Mantle surprised Rosen not only by roaring with laughter, but also insisting that they watch the rest of the film, because both he and his lawyer were enjoying it so much. Mantle later happily signed a release waiver, and the line stayed in the film. Because he was just kind of talking to Bernard about baseball, and he doesn't know anything about it. So he's like, Mickey Mantle? He's like, no. So he's joking. He doesn't... I don't think he really thinks he sucks, but... Alain Charnier Villa is the same building used in the original film. This is the first movie in Hollywood history to have a title and just a number after it. The Godfather Part 2 is the first sequel to have a number in it, but that was preceded by Part 1. For the French version of the film, the character of Popeye was given a thick American accent in order to allow sequences where he encounters linguistic problems to make sense, but not without occasional absurdities. For example, he has no trouble arguing extensively in an articulate way in French with local policemen, but can't find a decent way to order a glass of whiskey. Yeah, I was kind of like, because I've been to France, but this is much later, but, you know, it's a good amount of people do speak English. Although the French, a lot of them, you know, they get a little angry, kind of. They're like, you don't speak French? Like, no. A little snooty about it, but yeah. But I was like, I don't know, it's like 1975, I don't know. Maybe they didn't speak as much English back then, but... So they dubbed... Are they saying that they dubbed over Gene Hackman for the French version? He was given a thick American accent. I guess. Does that mean that they used someone else to dub him? Why would you do that? Okay. After this film, 20th Century Fox was planning a third French Connection movie. It is too bad that Roy Scheider isn't in this, though. I will say that, but I guess the logic is like, well, then you'd have two Americans and they both don't speak French, and, you know, so I guess I can understand. I don't really know why he wasn't in it, but they're going to do a third movie. Gene Hackman's going to play Popeye once again. He's going to be teamed with the comedian Richard Pryor as his on-screen partner. What the? Planned for release in 1979. The movie never happened. Probably because the sequel was an unexpected box office failure. It's just kind of weird. The green drink the bartender pours himself is a liqueur from Bayonne, France, called Green Azaria. Yeah, that scene's kind of funny because he's like drinking whiskey, and then he's like, why don't you pour yourself a drink? And the French guy pulls out this green stuff and starts drinking. He's like, you're gonna drink that green crap? Gene Hackman and Ed Lauter were the only American members of the cast. The last foot chase, two shots are supposedly from the first-person perspective of Gene Hackman. The wrist scene is bare and obviously that of a cameraman. Gene Hackman was wearing a sports jacket and his wrist was entirely covered. Yeah, when I saw that shot, I was like, that's a cool shot, but I was like, I wonder if that's actually Gene Hackman's hand. Probably not. Gene Hackman, Andre Penverne would later work again on March or Die, 1977. Doyle mentions several great American baseball stars: Mickey Mantle, New York Yankees, Whitey Ford, Willie Mays, and Max Lanier. Yeah, and then I think he says Max Lanier is a frog. Like, he keeps calling the French like frogs. Yeah, but yeah, if you could do me a favor and smash that like button. Be great. It really helps the channel. But I can say that because I'm part French, so you know, by ancestry, apparently. So rewrites for the screenplay took place over 3 days shortly before filming began. Virtually all dialogue spoken in the movie was written by Hamill. The original script involved a plot where Doyle and Rousseau travel to France, and when Rousseau is killed by Charnier's men, Doyle seeks revenge on Charnier. Roy Scheider, however, was already in production on Jaws and was therefore unavailable, so the script was changed and Popeye's heroin addiction storyline introduced into the script in the final film. When the film opened in Britain, some 4 months after its American opening, was oddly advertised not as French Connection 2, but as the French Connection number 2. That's weird, and was referred to as such by several reviewers. Some of which commented on the title change. However, British moviegoers who went to see the film discovered that the title was actually still French Connection 2, with no maroon rules and no definite article. It has since always been referred to by its proper title when shown on television and DVDs. So, but yeah, I think that's about it though. But yeah, I enjoyed the movie. French Connection 2. Check it out. Yeah, RIP to Gene Hackman and his wife. So, but I'll see you next time.